This happened a few months ago. I was 32 and lost my job in the city. I thought taking a temporary position on a remote farm would help me clear my head. The farm was isolated, surrounded by thick woods and fields that seemed to stretch forever. I wasn't used to farm work, and it felt quiet, almost abandoned. The old barns creaked in the wind. I've never stopped thinking about it. It was my second night there, and I was already uneasy. I remember lying in bed when I jolted awake. I heard singing. It was soft at first, almost comforting, but it felt strange. I thought I was dreaming. Maybe it was just the wind. I got out of bed and went to the window. I peered out into the night. The moonlight cast long shadows, but nothing was there. I felt a cold chill. My heart raced. I went back to bed, still hearing that strange melody. The next day was normal enough. I worked in the fields, but the singing lingered in my mind. Maybe it was just my imagination. I shook it off. But when night fell, the singing was back. This time, it was louder. I looked out the window, but still saw nothing. I had this strange feeling that something was watching me. I pulled the curtains closed, trying to block it out, but I couldn't sleep. Days turned into a blur of work and worry. I noticed odd markings on the barn doors. They looked like scratches, jagged lines carved into the wood. I tried to convince myself it was just the weather or animals passing through, but deep down, I felt it was something more. Every time I turned around, I felt like I was being watched. The fields rolled into darkness, and it felt wrong. Then another night came. The singing continued, now mixed with whispers I couldn't catch. I thought I saw shadowy figures in the moonlight, flitting between the trees. My hands shook as I reached for the window. I told myself I was just tired. But every night brought new sights, sounds, and that feeling of unease. One evening, I was stacking hay bales in the barn. I turned to grab another one and froze. A figure stood at the edge of the woods, just a silhouette. My heart dropped. I blinked and it was gone. Cold sweat ran down my back. I ran inside, locking the door. I didn't know what I was dealing with. Was the past of this farm haunting me? Maybe I was losing my grip on reality. The final night, I heard the singing again, but this time it was closer. I felt something pulling at me. Then a voice called my name. I turned and saw something out of the corner of my eye, but when I looked, nothing was there. My heart raced. I realized I was not alone. Whatever was there, I wished I knew what it wanted. I wanted to leave, but I felt trapped. The dark woods and fields wouldn't let me go. I couldn't shake the feeling that I was being watched. After that last night, I tried to focus on my work during the day, but my mind drifted. Every creak of the barn and rustle of leaves made my heart race. I decided I needed answers. I had to figure out what was haunting the farm. The next day, I went into town. It was a small place with a few shops and a diner. I felt like an outsider. I introduced myself to the owner of the diner, Mary. She was friendly and offered me a cup of coffee. I hesitated, but I asked her if she knew anything about the history of the farm. Mary's smile faded. "Not much good, I'm afraid," she said. "It was abandoned for years. Some say it's cursed." I felt a chill at her words. She told me stories about a family that had lived there long ago. There were whispered tales of strange happenings, accidents, and a sudden disappearance. The more she talked, the colder I felt. Something awful had happened, and I was in the middle of it. I asked her about the woods. She looked uneasy. "Many don't go in there after dark. It's better to stay away." That was enough for me. I made my excuses and left. Back at the farm, dusk was settling in. The shadows stretched longer, and I could hear that familiar singing again. It was louder, more insistent. As night fell, the whispers returned too. My heart pounded as I stood at the window. I had to confront whatever was happening. I grabbed a flashlight and stepped outside. With each step into the yard, the air felt heavier. I aimed the beam into the dark woods. The singing grew louder. Then, I saw something move between the trees. A flash of white, just a glimpse. My breathing quickened. I called out, "Hello? Is anyone there?" Silence answered. But the singing continued, a haunting melody that wound through the trees. I felt an overwhelming urge to follow it, to find out what was causing it. I stepped cautiously toward the edge of the woods. Suddenly, I heard a crunching noise behind me. I spun around, shining my flashlight towards the noise. Nothing. My pulse raced, and I again faced the woods. I was almost to the tree line when a voice broke through the air, close and clear. It was singing my name. I froze. Was it real? I felt rooted to the spot, my body torn between fear and curiosity. I took a deep breath and finally ventured forward, drawn by the sound. The flashlight flickered and then died, plunging me into darkness. Panic set in. I couldn't even hear the singing now. Just silence, wrapping around me like a shroud. In that moment, I regretted my choices. I turned to retrace my steps, but I stumbled. The ground under my feet felt wrong, uneven. I fell, my hands hitting the ground. When I looked up, I saw figures emerging from the tree line. They were shapes in the dark, indistinguishable and terrifying. I scrambled to my feet knowing I had to run, but my legs felt heavy. Then everything went dark. I jolted awake, gasping for breath. My heart raced, and my body felt weightless. The darkness was thick, but I blinked hard, slowly realizing I was on the ground. I pushed myself up, confusion flooding my mind. Had the singing really drawn me in, or was it all a dream? I listened. The woods were silent now, but the air felt charged, like the calm before a storm. I turned cautiously, scanning the area. Nothing. No figures, no sounds, just the quiet rustle of leaves swaying in the wind. I was back at the edge of the tree line, but I didn't remember getting here. Pulling myself to my feet, I brushed off the dirt and leaves. Then my flashlight flickered back to life. The beam cut through the darkness, illuminating the path ahead. I stepped cautiously into the woods, determined to confront whatever was out there. But dread lurked at the back of my mind. I took a few shaky steps when I noticed something on the ground. It glowed faintly. I knelt down, my heart thundering as I picked up what looked like an old locket. It was tarnished and heavy in my palm. I flipped it open, and a small, faded photograph peeked out. It showed a young woman, her eyes soulful and sad. I frowned, sensing a connection to the stories Mary had told. Just then, I heard a shuffling noise nearby. My heart raced anew. I turned, shining the light in every direction. The shadows danced menacingly. "Is someone there?" I called out, my voice breaking the silence again. No response. The air turned cold, and I felt a lingering presence. I couldn't shake the feeling that I was not alone anymore. I clutched the locket tightly. I knew I had stumbled upon something significant. What if the woman in the photo had been connected to the family Mary spoke about? Then I saw her. A figure stepped into the beam of my flashlight, wispy and ethereal. It was the woman from the locket. Her expression was sorrowful, her lips moving silently as if trying to speak. Panic swelled inside me. I backed away, but I tripped and fell again, landing hard on the forest floor. Her form flickered, the light seeming to dim around her. "Help me!" I thought I heard her voice, the same haunting melody wrapping around my thoughts. The words chilled me. How could I help her? Before I could process it, she pointed deeper into the woods. A direction I felt an overwhelming urge to follow, despite my instincts yelling at me to run. I glanced over my shoulder, back toward my home, then at her pleading eyes. I couldn't stay here. I had to know more. I stood up slowly, resolve filling my chest. I would follow. I had to find the truth about the farm and what had happened to her. But every step felt heavier, and the shadows whispered around me, warning me against the path ahead. Then, just as I took my first step, a low growl echoed through the trees. Something was out there with me. The growl echoed again, a low rumble that sent shivers down my spine. I froze, unsure whether to turn and run or to stay put and see what would happen next. My flashlight flickered, and I felt a wave of panic rise within me. Maybe I should have just gone home. But the woman's eyes stayed with me. I lifted the beam again and scanned the shadows, heart pounding. "Who's there?" I called, forcing my voice to steady. No answer, just silence wrapped around the trees. Suddenly, a rustling sound moved swiftly through the underbrush to my left. I turned sharply, my pulse racing. With a quick flick of my wrist, I aimed the flashlight at the noise. What emerged briefly startled me. A rabbit darted away, its long ears flopping as it hopped back into the safety of the shadows. My breath escaped in a rush. Just a rabbit. I was being ridiculous. But then I remembered the woman. I needed to know what she wanted. I took a shaky breath, adjusting my grip on the locket. It still felt warm against my palm, contrasting the chill in the air. I made up my mind. I had come this far, and I wasn't going to turn back now. I took a step toward the deeper part of the woods, glancing at the faint glow of the locket. Maybe it was guiding me. Following the tug in my chest, I walked forward, each footfall crunching on the leaves. The air thickened as I moved deeper. The trees closed in, their branches clawing at the sky. The feeling of being watched returned, crawling over my skin like 1,000 tiny bugs. I shook my head, trying to clear it. "This isn't real," I muttered to myself. "It's just the stories." Then ahead, I spotted a flicker of light through the branches. I made my way toward it, my heart racing faster. As I moved closer, I saw that the light was soft and flickering like candle flames. It wasn't too far away. I crept forward, straining to catch any sounds beyond the crackling of twigs underfoot. Just as I approached, the light vanished completely, plunging me back into darkness. My breath hitched, panic rising. Something about the sudden absence felt wrong. I turned to retrace my steps, and then heard it again. A growl, but this time closer, more menacing. I whipped around, shining my flashlight into the obscurity. Nothing. Just shadows twisting in the dim light. But instinct told me I was being hunted. My legs moved before I could think. I turned and ran, the panic fueling my speed. The growling grew louder, a fearsome echo chasing me through the woods. I darted between trees, branches scratching my skin, the light from my flashlight flickering erratically. I hadn't gone far when I stumbled upon an old hollow tree, big enough to hide inside. Without hesitating, I ducked into it, praying I wouldn't be seen. I pressed my back against the damp wood, heart hammering, listening as the growling stopped. Silence enveloped me, thick and suffocating. The darkness seemed to close in, and I squeezed the locket tighter. "What do you want?" I whispered into the void, hoping for an answer. That's when I noticed a faint glow once more, pulsing deep within the hollow. I had to know what it was. As the glow flickered within the hollow, it cast an eerie light across the rough bark of the tree. I leaned in closer, curiosity pulling me toward the source. My heart raced. Was it the same light I had seen before, the one that vanished so suddenly? The glow grew brighter, illuminating a small object nestled in the hollow's center. I hesitated, the fear of what I would uncover battling my need for answers. I edged forward until the locket's warmth seemed to fill my entire hand. Maybe it was leading me to this, whatever it was. As I reached out, my fingers brushed against something cool and smooth. It was a small, ornate pendant, not unlike the locket I held. This one was different, shaped like a crescent moon surrounded by tiny stars, its surface etched with unfamiliar symbols. It pulsed with an energy that felt almost alive, but as I grasped it, the ground beneath me trembled. I pulled back, startled. The hollow shook, and the growl returned, this time more intense, rumbling from deep within the woods. Had I disturbed something? The sound reverberated through my chest, gripping me with a fresh wave of dread. I looked toward the entrance of the tree, yearning to escape, but it felt as if the shadows thickened, trapping me in place. Then, in the half-light, I saw them. Shadows flitting between the trees, moving closer. They were unlike anything I had ever seen, vaguely human but twisted, shifting in ways that made my heart pound in fear. My eyes widened, adrenaline surging through me. They were coming for me. I clutched both the locket and the pendant tightly, pulling myself to my feet. I had to get out. I squeezed through the narrow space of the hollow and burst into the darkness once more. The growls morphed into disturbing whispers, swirling around me like wind tangling my thoughts. I sprinted again, no plan, just the instinct to survive. The flashlight flickered, the beam weak against the vast blackness. I could feel it, not just something chasing me, but something waiting, watching, hungry. Branches clawed at my clothes, and the whispers grew louder, more insistent, as if they were taunting me. Even the trees seemed to sway ominously, closing ranks as I zigzagged through the maze of trunks. But just as I thought I had gained some distance, I stumbled into a clearing. Moonlight broke through the canopy, splattering silver light across the ground. There, in the center, stood an old well, its stones moss-covered and crumbling. I hesitated. Something deep inside the well called to me, yet terror gnawed at my gut. The growling was nearby again, just behind me. I felt I could turn and run, but the voices urged me closer to the well. I teetered at the edge. That's when I saw it. Across the water, beneath the surface, a face stared back at me. It was the woman's face, the same haunting eyes, lifeless and full of sorrow. She seemed to reach for me, her expression pleading. My breath hitched as fear and confusion engulfed me. What did this all mean? And just as the growls intensified, everything around me faded into a cacophony of shadows, reaching for me, pulling me toward the well. I had to escape, but I was already too close to the edge. I lost my balance, teetering dangerously at the edge of the well. The visceral urge to flee warred with the pull of the woman's gaze. Something in me surged, like a wave crashing over an unsteady rock. But just as I steadied myself, the whispers escalated into a chaotic chorus, drowning out my thoughts. With a sudden rush, I stumbled back, reeling away from the well's edge. That was a mistake. The air grew thick, suffocating in its intensity. I felt shadows pulsating around me, almost like they were alive. I turned to run, but the growls were right there, closer than before. I rushed for the trees, my lungs burning with every breath I drew. The flashlight flickered again, and for a moment I thought I could leave the shadows behind. But the whispers changed, morphing into words I could almost understand. "Come to us," they beckoned. "You belong with us." Panic surged through me as I stumbled further into the forest. I couldn't belong to anything like that. Not to whatever shadowy creatures were lurking around me. Then I remembered the pendant in my palm. Could it help me? I fumbled to examine it in the weak light, my hands trembling. The moment I held it up, a warm glow surged from its surface. The shadows paused, the whispers dying down for just a heartbeat. In that brief silence, I took a deep breath, realizing I had to take control. I had uncovered something ancient, something powerful. I couldn't let fear consume me. Clutching the pendant tighter, I turned back toward the well, my body trembling, but determined. "Leave me alone!" I shouted into the darkness, voice echoing off the trees. The shadows shrank back, heat radiating from the pendant like a protective barrier. But then, from the depths of the well, something stirred. The water rippled violently, and that woman's face twisted, her sorrow transforming into a look of anger. "You can't escape," she echoed, her voice deep and resonant, drowning out the growls. I stumbled back, horrified, as another figure emerged from the well, a tall shadow made solid by the moonlight. Its eyes glowed like embers, locking onto me with predatory focus. I turned to run again, but my feet felt like lead. My heart raced as I sensed the presence behind me. I could hear its breath now, heavy and labored, as if it were savoring the chase. Desperately, I scanned my surroundings. The trees were too thick to nestle into for safety. That's when I saw the pendant's light glow brighter, illuminating the ground around me. I needed to find an exit. Fumbling in the dark, I sprinted toward the nearest tree, ducking at the last second as a shadow leapt just above me. The pendant pulsed in my hand, a rhythm syncing with the thrumming terror in my chest. A path opened up to my left, bathed in faint light. I didn't think twice. I darted into it, praying for a way out. But the shadows circled around me, their whispers returning, haunting echoes promising I could not hide from what I had awakened. And then everything went quiet. I stood there, surrounded by the sudden silence. My heart thudded against my ribs, and I couldn't shake the feeling that I was being watched. The light from the pendant flickered dimly, but I held on to it, hoping for guidance. In the stillness, a low growl reverberated through the air, breaking the uneasy quiet. My instincts screamed at me to move, but I was frozen, scanning the trees for any signs of movement. Then, just as quickly as it had disappeared, the whispering returned. But now it was different. It sounded closer, more intimate. "Join us," it urged, a soothing yet sinister tone weaving through the sounds of the forest. My skin crawled, and I couldn't bear the thought of giving in. I forced myself to take a step backward, then another. I could hardly remember where I was. The path was winding now, twisting through the underbrush, leading further from the well and deeper into the woods. Panic ignited again, and I took off in the direction that felt most open, praying the shadows would vanish. But ahead, the trees parted to reveal a clearing bathed in moonlight. Heart racing, I stumbled into the open space. My breath came in shuddering gasps as I caught sight of something unexpected. A tall, weathered wooden barn loomed in the distance. Its presence felt oddly comforting amidst the chaos, a relic of normalcy in this strange nightmare. As I neared the barn, the shadows slowed, almost hesitant, as if they feared crossing an invisible boundary. I nudged the barn door, and it creaked open, revealing a dark interior that smelled of damp hay and something else, like earth that had been turned too long. The pendant's glow intensified as I stepped inside, pushing back the encroaching darkness. I turned slowly, scanning the inside for anything, anyone. Suddenly, a soft sound echoed from the far corner. My breath caught in my throat as I squinted into the dimness, trying to make out the shape. And then, I saw it. Something pale and unmoving. It looked like a figure, hunched over, shrouded in a thin layer of fog. I took a cautious step closer, heartbeat pounding in my ears. "Who's there?" I croaked, voice trembling with uncertainty. A raspy voice answered, "You shouldn't have come here." The weight of those words hung heavily in the air. I took another step back, chill creeping up my spine. The figure turned slightly, revealing only an outline, its face obscured but radiating an eerie energy, pulling at something deep inside me. It felt familiar, achingly so. "What do you mean, I shouldn't be here?" I pressed, desperate for answers. But before the figure could respond, a violent wind swept through the barn, slamming the door shut behind me. Panic seized me. The whispers crescendoed, now a deafening roar. The shadows surged forward, pouring in through the cracks, surrounding me, closing in tight. "Let me out!" I shouted, my voice barely escaping above the chaos. That's when I noticed something glimmering on the barn floor. A silver locket, half buried in some hay. I knelt, reaching for it. The moment my fingers brushed the cool metal, everything went black. Suddenly, the whispers ceased, and I was left with a deafening void. I felt myself floating in darkness, suspended in an unsettling stillness. There were no sounds, no whispers, just the weight of silence pressing down on me. It was disorienting. My heart began to race again as I fought to remember where I was and what had just happened. Then, with a sudden jolt, the oppressive void released its grip, and I gasped for air as I found myself back inside the barn. The glow from the pendant surged around me like a beacon, illuminating the corners of the space. My breath quickened as I looked around, but the figure was gone. "Hello?" I called out, my voice echoing in the empty space. No reply came. I glanced down at the silver locket still clutched tightly in my hand. It felt warm against my palm, pulsing softly as if it had a heartbeat of its own. I opened it cautiously, half expecting another surge of darkness to envelop me, but instead, a small, faded photograph slipped out. I picked it up and squinted at the image. It was an old photograph of a family, 7 people, smiling brightly. They looked happy, but why did the boy in the front, with the messy brown hair, seem so familiar? I tapped the locket against my thigh, trying to jog my memory. It struck me that the figure I had seen earlier might be connected to this photo. I stood up, glancing nervously towards the barn door. The air felt charged, like the calm before a storm. The whispering had changed again. Now it sounded more like laughter, echoing from outside. I had to find out what happened to the figure and why the locket drew me so inexplicably. As I stepped toward the door, hesitation gripped me. Should I stay here, surrounded by the remnants of forgotten history, or step into the unknown? But I was compelled to uncover the truth, whatever it may be. I pushed the door open, and the cool night air hit me, invigorating yet ominous. The clearing stretched before me, moonlight painting everything in strange silver hues. I couldn't shake the feeling that the shadows were watching me, waiting. I took a cautious step into the open, scanning the forest. Somewhere, deep within those trees, the whispers beckoned me again. "Come find us." Panic surged as I realized the whispers were inviting me back into the woods. They felt almost like a pull, an urge that wrapped around my mind. My heart raced, but I pressed forward, drawn toward the source. I couldn't help but think about the family in the picture. What had happened to them? Just as I reached the edge of the trees, something caught my eye, a faint glimmer off to my right. I turned quickly, heart in my throat. It was another locket, similar to the one I held. It lay half buried in the soft earth, shimmering beneath the moonlight. As I bent down to retrieve it, a low growl rose from the shadows behind me. I froze, every instinct screaming to turn back, but it was too late. Someone, or something, was coming, and I had no idea what awaited me in the dark. The growl was like gravel scraping underfoot, a low, menacing sound that sent chills rippling down my spine. I hesitated for a split second, weighing my options. I could run back to the barn or stay and confront whatever lurked in the shadows. Curiosity pulled me, even as fear clawed at my edges. I clutched the locket tightly. The second one shimmered in my palm, and I could swear it vibrated slightly, almost as if agitated. The whispers intensified, overlapping with the growl, creating an unsettling symphony that blurred the lines of what was real. I took a deep breath, forcing my legs to move, inching toward the source of the sound. My heart pounded as I scanned the darkness. Leaves rustled in the breeze, shadows danced around me, but I saw nothing. Yet the sense of being watched was undeniable. Then suddenly, there was movement to my left, a flash of fur. My breath hitched. "Is anyone there?" I called, my voice wavering. The growl morphed into a bark, almost playful but laced with something darker. A figure emerged from the shadows, a large, shaggy dog, but something was off. Its eyes glowed yellow in the moonlight, a dangerous flicker that did not fit the animal's seemingly friendly demeanor. "Hey, boy," I stuttered, half relieved, half terrified. The dog stepped closer, tilting its head, but behind it, I saw a silhouette lurking. I squinted, trying to make it out, and my heart dropped. The figure was human, a boy about my age, standing still with an unreadable expression. He looked just like the boy in the photograph, the one with the messy brown hair. "Who are you?" I croaked, gripping the 2 lockets. My voice felt small against the vastness of night. The boy stepped forward, eyes locked onto mine. "You found it," he said, pointing to the locket in my hand. "You have to come with me." My instincts screamed to run, but a compulsion washed over me, urging me to follow. "What do you mean, come with you?" I asked, voice trembling. The shadows around us seemed to hold their breath. "The locket, it connects us. You have to understand." He gestured toward the forest, and the air crackled, a tension building that I couldn't quite place. In that moment, the growl returned, louder and sharper than before. The dog bared its teeth, eyes unyielding. Panic squeezed my chest. "What's happening?" I shouted, desperate for an answer. The boy's face hardened. "They don't want you to know. It's not safe here." Before I could respond, the shadows shifted violently and the dog lunged, barking fiercely. The boy turned swiftly, a look of determination set on his features. "You have to trust me," he yelled over the chaos, and the world tilted as I realized I had no choice left. And then everything went dark. A wash of stars and silence enveloped me, and I felt myself slipping back into the void. The last thing I saw was the boy's piercing gaze, locking onto mine, as if promising that no matter what happened next, I was not alone in this. What had I stumbled into? I needed answers, but as I drifted, uncertainty loomed larger than ever. I awoke with a start, the cool earth beneath me grounding me back into reality. I blinked against a diffused light, realizing I was sprawled in a small clearing, surrounded by tall trees. The forest was alive with sounds, birds chirping, leaves rustling in the breeze. But everything felt different. The dread that had been my constant companion was gone, replaced with an unsettling calm. Pushing myself upright, I noticed I still clutched the two lockets tightly in my hands. The warmth radiating from them felt reassuring, as if they held the answers I desperately sought. My mind raced with memories of the boy and the strange dog. What had they meant when they said, "It's not safe here"? I looked around. The trees seemed to hum with a soft energy, and for a fleeting moment I felt a connection to something ancient and powerful. Taking a deep breath, I rose to my feet, resolved to uncover what had happened and why I was brought back here. As I treaded carefully through the underbrush, I spotted a faint glow through the trees, reminiscent of the pendant's light. Curiosity ignited in me once again, and I moved toward it, each step accompanied by the distant echo of a melody, that same haunting song that had drawn me in before. But this time, the song held no fear. It felt like an invitation. As I drew closer to the source, I emerged into a larger clearing. The twilight sky surrounded me, while an otherworldly glow emanated from the center. A circle of ancient stones, worn and covered in moss. In the middle, shards of glass sparkled under the moonlight. A profound stillness enveloped the space. The air thrummed with energy, sending delicate shivers across my skin. I approached carefully, feeling the pull of the locket in my hand, a connection strengthening with every heartbeat. "What is this place?" I whispered to myself, barely able to contain the reverence flooding through me. Suddenly, I heard whispering again, but it was different now. The voices felt familiar and welcoming, as if they were calling out to those who sought answers. "It has waited for you," they murmured, a soft chorus wrapping around me like a gentle breeze. I set down the pendant and the second locket in the center of the stones. The moment they made contact with the ground, the shimmering light intensified and grew brighter. It twinkled, casting scattered reflections around me, and I felt a rush of warmth travel through my body, illuminating the shadows that had tricked me for so long. My heart raced as visions flashed before my eyes, scenes of the family from the photograph, laughter echoing through the fields, and the warmth of sunlight. Then images of the boy, standing beside the shimmering figures of his family. They looked just as I remembered from the photograph, and I understood now. They were seeking closure, searching for something to free them. My breaths quickened as understanding dawned. These were the souls trapped by despair and loss, lingering in the woods, unable to move on. They needed to be acknowledged and set free. I felt an overwhelming urge to tell them that they weren't alone anymore. Just as the glow surged higher, the shadows from the trees shifted at the edge of the clearing. I could make out forms, lingering just outside the light, their expressions unreadable. The growling echoed again, bolder now, as the darkness pulsed in unison with the growing light. "Join us!" The whispers beckoned, a beautiful invitation laced with a threat. Throwing back my shoulders, I stepped forward. "I will not join you. I will help them!" I shouted into the dark, a mix of fear and resolve strengthening my voice. The energy around the stones danced, answering my defiance. The pulsing rhythm of the locks vibrated in harmony with my heart, urging me forward. But the shadows surged, twisting and spiraling, and from their depths the tall figure emerged, the embodiment of that fear I'd felt, silhouetted against the glow. Its eyes, like burning coals, locked onto mine with an intensity that pierced through all doubt. "Do you think you can change the fate sealed in this land?" it hissed, a voice filled with ancient bitterness. "This is how it has always been." I felt my legs quaking, uncertainty creeping back, but I couldn't falter now. "I won't let fear control me. I will break this cycle." Suddenly the voices crescendoed and began to rise in unity. A blinding light erupted from the stones. The shadows writhed, anguished, lost in the brightness. I saw faces from the past, echoing their stories, their emotions flooding the clearing. The boy, the family, the echoes of those who'd gone unheard. With a surge of courage, I extended my hands to the light, ready to channel the energy. I felt the connection tighten, the pendant vibrating fiercely in my grip. "You are free! You're not forgotten!" I cried. The blinding light enveloped everything around me, merging with the shadows, filling the clearing with a kaleidoscope of fading images, smiles, laughter, sorrow. And then, at that moment, everything shifted suddenly. I fell back, the world spinning around me as the brightness consumed the last remnants of the darkness, pushing it further and further into the woods until it burst into a starry explosion. Silence. Stillness. I opened my eyes and blinked against the dim light. The clearing was empty now. The stones stood resolutely. The air felt lighter. The oppressive weight of the shadows had dissipated. I felt a sense of relief wash over me, mingled with sorrow for the weight of what had been lost. Yet, despite the peace that now surrounded me, I still held a myriad of questions. What had truly happened to the family, to the boy? Would they truly find peace in the afterlife, or would remnants of their past linger on the edge of the woods? With the lockets cradled gently in my palms, I turned away from the clearing, knowing that although their story had met an end, others still roamed between the trees of this haunting land. I walked cautiously back toward the barn, the night still whispering secrets, the moon overhead casting a pale light on my path. As I stepped into the cool embrace of the forest, I couldn't shake the thought. Even with some battles won, many questions would forever remain in the shadows, the lines between the natural and supernatural still blurred. I'd changed, but the echoes of that land would stay with me, inviting me always, lurking just behind the light. I'd never truly be freed from its pull. And as I stepped through the remnants of the past, I hoped to find my own peace in the process, wherever that may lead me.